Hey guys, I'm Brittany,
I'm Maria.
and welcome to a special Sunday night edition of the Be More podcast.
It is evening, so I don't
Not
know
that it's
what.
any different than what our regular episodes are, but
I
just
think it's really just the time of filming.
yeah, it's just a
That's
warning that whatever you expect to happen, whatever is like off limits during the day, is not off limits after dark.
and it's also another edition of we're eating while we're
We're
recording.
eating something. Um, I could not make good. Not that I have to eat vegan mac and cheese,
hmm
but I feel like it's so tedious. So if anybody out there knows, I'm eating vegan mac and cheese from a restaurant in Maryland. Um, in case you're very confused about why I have food, I am in New Jersey, but I was in Maryland and I brought this food home with me. I always wanted to find, especially when I was vegan, like a really simple mac and cheese recipe, but they're so convoluted. So if anybody out there who's listening knows a really good like vegan mac and cheese recipe, share it with us.
I bet you because you can buy vegan cheese obviously, and just
Mm-hmm.
kind of prepare it like a mac and cheese, but
But it needs
it doesn't taste as like
and
creamy.
the melting temperature
Mm.
and like the way that it melts and the consistency of vegan cheeses is very different than regular cheese.
hmm
So it makes it more difficult. But anywho,
And
so
I'm eating clementine just in case someone's wondering. The other chewing.
um yeah, so how are you feeling?
Um,
Carrying off of what we said we were gonna do last week.
yeah. I'm tired
Mm,
physically, but not like mentally, emotionally. I don't think.
that's good.
It's getting to the point where it's like right after busy season, which is where I'm like the most sane.
Mm,
So like I've actually like cooked for myself throughout the weekend, like actually grocery shop, like I'm eating
wow.
a fruit. Like that should say a lot.
Oh, I love
So
it.
how are
I
you
love
feeling?
it. I'm good. I am see, you said how and I was able to say I'm good. So now I have to autocorrect myself.
Really, it's supposed to be what are you feeling? So I'm not bad.
That's cool. It's I noticed it. I was like, wait, you weren't the whole reason of what. It's so funny because that proves how autocorrect both of us are to just like put that out. Uh,
Yeah.
I definitely feel I having a couple days away was super needed. I'm happy that I did it. It's funny because I am realizing my sense and desire for adventure, for something. I have a very strong sense of adventure and wanting to be able to adventure. And I haven't been giving myself that in like previous, honestly, in months. I haven't done something to that extent of new space, new experience in months. So it felt really nice and to be able to have that new experience and also have my nephews because they're just the stinking cutest things on the face of the earth. But
hmm
I have to say, like, part of me leaving them is really made me really sad. My one nephew is he's going to be 4 at the end of the month and he just cried and
Oh.
to see him cry because I'm it was just it was super sad. So it's interesting how those emotions work. And it's so funny too because
hmm
I had to tell, I was listening to this really interesting thought. We've talked a lot about emotions, right? And how we have to not tell ourselves when we're feeling an emotion, like, it'll be okay, or like to ignore the fact that you're feeling something. So when he was getting and my other nephew ended up getting like a little bit of a bug while I was there and got like really sick all over my
Oh no.
um so it's so interesting to think about how when we have a tendency to be around kids, we want to comfort them and say that it's okay or like it's going to be okay. But then, like, to some extent, is that how we start training? Do we start training them that young to not really fully experience their emotions because we just try to, like, it's okay and move on?
I think that no, you can tell them it's not okay. I feel like
Right,
more yeah, like I feel like you're still programmed to do that,
right.
to say the world is like a good place, but like you can also start I see more and more like parents on TikTok, like millennials and like,
Mm.
younger parents, start off with saying like, it's not okay and but that's okay. Like, like
Yeah,
things like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
So I was when I, especially, I mean, we were obviously experiencing this throughout the time with them because things happen constantly. and they're emoting. But as I was saying goodbye, especially to the littler one, and he was getting really sad, my first thought was to be like, "Oh, it's okay. Like you're gonna see him." And then I was like, "No, no, don't say it's okay," because I said to him, I was like, "I'm sad too, bud. I'm sad, and it's okay that
Yeah.
we're sad."
Yeah, exactly. I
So
think it's better.
it's interesting. I think I was definitely right as I predicted that kids are so being around kids just really changes your perspective on everything.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
I'm sure. They're
because
like unfiltered.
yeah, and they're just they're not programmed yet. The way that we've been talking a lot in the past couple of weeks about how we're programmed and how we've been molded into things and we have these societally deemed appropriate responses and actions and stuff, and little kids don't have that in a glorious way. And when I was watching um when I was watching the boys play and we went to the parks, we went and just seeing them have a feeling or have a thought and just be able to take action on it, right?
Hmm.
Just like be able to really play and run and have so much sense of freedom, especially because like, you see that so much in boys, like
Uh-huh.
especially little boys with all the hormones that are running around. So it's so nice to see that. And it was a good reset for me to remember that when I have those like impulses and desires, like I want adventure or I need to do something, I need to do it. I need to listen to that part of myself as well.
I mean, it's hard to. I feel like, because
It
I
is.
haven't taken a vacation since pre-COVID,
Mhm.
and like, it's not like I can't. Um, I just don't know why I
Define
haven't.
define vacation. What do you mean by vacation?
Like,
I don't mean like the definition. I mean like what do you
deem as a vacation,
yeah, what's a vacation for you?
like taking like a week or two off straight,
So it's like vacation is like not working for you?
not working, also just traveling. I haven't
Yeah.
traveled outside of New Jersey since pre-COVID,
And that's
or the
one of the
tri-state
things
area.
that's one of the things that I want to change my because I it's funny, vacation has such a fantastical, right? Like attachment to it the like in now, especially because of like social media and the abilities and the ways that we're able to vacate. But that's the truth of the matter is that vacation is literally just like you removing yourself from the normal experience
Yeah,
and
that's exactly what that
something.
is.
And there doesn't have to be any expectation attached to it.
Yeah, well, it depends on, I guess, who you're vacationing
Discussing it
with.
with, yeah, that's true. But I think that that's why I thought to myself about because in all honesty, I love my nephews, but like the ideal of vacation when you take out what it really like vacate the concept of vacating, it's not a vacation to roll over in bed at 7 in the morning and have two tiny little beady eyes staring at you like
Yeah,
oh
yeah,
man Brit, like that's not a like you know what I mean, that doesn't match that like that ideal quote unquote of like a vacation the way we deem it these days, like being able to relax, but that it's an adventure, right? Like
hmm,
getting to be with them, me getting to go and explore and do stuff that I don't normally do is an adventure. And that is, I mean, I'm definitely tired, but like my soul is revitalized. So
yeah, yeah,
that's definitely what just finding more ways to adventure away from the norm are things that I'm going to try to bring in more. And it's going to be easier now that the weather's nice and like things are, not as intense with COVID and things are more readily available. But that's what I'm going to start planning literally into like my schedule, and my schedule with Dan is, I don't know, I think life is meant to be adventured.
yeah. I don't like being stagnant. Some people
It
do, and that's
becomes
fine.
painful, but it's
Oh,
definitely, for me personally, it becomes painful. And I
yeah, same.
100% in the weeks leading up to like me the day before or 2 days before I was supposed to leave. And now, mind you, I deal with a lot of hormonal stuff because of my IUD and being female during, times of the month. But it this sounds terrible in hindsight, but it was the reality of what I was facing. And maybe somebody listening to this has experienced this. I literally was in such a not good space from that like confinement that I was creating for myself that I could not look at myself in the mirror.
Oh.
Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it was coming from the mindset of like, oh my
Yeah.
God, like it's you again. Like, I'm looking at you in this mirror again.
Damn.
I can't like, and and it was hard because, and I was really struggling with it because I didn't know why I was getting, I mean, like I said, hormones get in the way, dealing with,
Yeah.
all of that stuff gets in the
It's
way.
extreme. It's an extreme during the
Yeah, it
time of the
puts
month.
you, yes, it puts you in a not fun place. But I didn't know why I was feeling that way
Hmm.
until I got in my car and I just started like driving. I had to drive like somewhat usual roads to get to the main highway. And the second that I hit like the highway and my body realized like we are going away now, everything inside of me changed.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to change the scenery,
Yeah.
the environment
Which
around
is
you.
why like isolation and imprisonment and all that stuff is so unfortunate and just
It's so unethical in my opinion.
in
Uh,
all of those unwords. But so yeah,
you had fun though, I would assume.
I did have fun.
You went to a lot of places I saw on
Oh,
your
dude, I was
Instagram.
all over the place. We went
Yeah.
to, I mean, it was one of the busiest weekends for them because when you have kids, you need them to do things and be entertained. Maryland has this amazing setup of like planned communities, which is something they're really trying to bring to Jersey more now. But um, their Parks and Recreation has all of this like planned out parks. Um,
Okay.
and when I say parks, it looks like a mini theme park. Like we went to
Mm.
this one park that they had that had like giant spaceships and all of these giant like metal things that became musical instruments. And like it was like the one park had different themed areas to it. There was a farm area and a space area, and it was and there was like giant dinosaur park. It was crazy. It was
That's
crazy.
cool.
It
That's
was
cool.
like something that you would pay to go to, and they have them kind of all over the place. And it's just cool because like for my nephews, that's a norm. They get to experience these really cool things. And we went to Ravens, the M&T Bank Stadium, because my
Hmm.
uh, the boys are Cub Scouts, and they
Okay,
have to
cool.
be in Cub Scouts with somebody who's a retired player for the Ravens.
Oh, really?
So we got to take a private tour, which was cool.
Hmm.
And then this morning we went bowling with my younger nephew for the first time, which was freaking hysterical and adorable. But yeah, I mean, yep.
Yeah, and I like uh kudos to you for literally coming on here to film right as you walked into the door after being in Maryland. How long is that drive again? I can't remember.
It's like roughly 3 hours. It's always worse coming back to Jersey because traffic's always annoying and nonsensical, but I like driving. I'm a,
Yeah, same.
side note, I mean, this is an important note for Maria and I, but anybody else who cares about our musical interests, I did not know that Mayday Parade let out a whole album last year.
What's it called?
Um, the the meaning of falling apart,
Oh, didn't know
an
that.
entire album. I didn't know about it. I discovered it on my 3 hour ride home and
You know
listened
they
to
were
it.
just at they were just actually
I know,
touring.
and
They were in Jersey.
I know, and I wanted to go. I think they're coming either next week or something, but it just wasn't going to work out.
I'm literally looking up this album. I did not know that.
And then they let out an acoustic version of one of their like classic songs that I can't think of the name of off the top of my head. But that's what I do in my 3 hour car rides. I listen to music, and it was also very funny. You know who else I listened to who has tons of new music that I didn't catch up on? Matt and Kim.
Matt and Kim. Oh my, I never really got into them in high school when they kind of blew up for us around that time period. But I know a couple
Yeah,
songs.
I
Um,
enjoyed I enjoyed it. And
that's
I'm a
good.
little Jack's mannequin. I listen,
Yeah,
I stare,
yeah.
and it's nice. And I look at the changing, like I'm one of those crazy people who like really stares at like the changing landscapes. And
Oh, that's not crazy.
there's one,
Also,
there's
it's crazy. Sorry.
what?
Also, is crazy a politically correct term nowadays?
What?
Crazy.
See?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, was it ever?
I don't think so. Right?
I don't think in
Go
my
off a
mind.
tangent.
I feel like we don't mean crazy when we say crazy
It's just in our vernacular, I think.
things, if that makes sense. I feel like if we say, whoa, your hair is crazy, your hair is messy, your hair is uncontrolled, your hair is untamable, right? Like that, which I will totally tell you that my 3-year-old nephew called my hair this weekend, when he's not wrong. But
Damn.
I feel like when we say it in response of like that's early, we say like that's awesome or unbelievable, that's crazy.
Like that's wild. Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like it's never been accessible to be like that person's crazy or you're crazy.
Yeah,
'Cause
that's not right.
that's the that's the hard one. I don't think we mean it when we say it for things outside of people, but it's just what
Mhm.
comes out, I guess.
Yeah, no, I just listen to a lot of podcasts and whenever they say crazy, they're like, oh, just kidding. Like, not just kidding, but like, oh, that's my
Ah,
bad. Like, that's not what I meant. Like, they're like, because people are
interesting.
still learning. I feel like, because they're like, oh no, they're not crazy. Like, if they say crazy in response to like something that a person has
Oh,
done,
like they're crazy.
like, because I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts, so that
Yeah.
that phrase keeps coming up, and every time they're like, oh, just kidding, no, sorry, like, back it up, like they're mentally ill, like there's something wrong there or something, like
Right, right. There's something going on.
yeah, that we're not aware of or
That's
something.
interesting. The
So
uh the thing that always and the thing that always gets me, it's funny when I do now, mind you, because of COVID, I hadn't been down there to visit them. I hadn't been down there. Like they'd come up over random times, but I hadn't been down there since probably 2019, if not really early in 2020. But there are like landmarks that I mark to tell myself like how close I am. And
mhm.
one of the and I never it never I'll never get I don't think I'll ever not be baffled by it. There's one bridge that I cross that's like I don't know, it's got a name, but like the type of bridge that it is, there's no like structure above. It's just like a road that looks like it is
Oh.
floating between like these two giant mountainsides and this massive river.
Mhm.
It's not the Delaware. I don't know what. It's somewhere in Maryland.
I don't
And
know. Yeah.
there's and anybody who's ever driven through Maryland on 95, maybe you know exactly what I'm talking about right now. And there's no like siding. It's just like the little bumpers. Like it's terrifying,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah,
But
no big deal.
it always absolutely baffles me when I drive over it because when you look side to side, you just see like these giant hills and like this ever turning, and it looks, I don't know, it looks like you're looking down, looking at the end of the world. And it like super got me this time.
Yeah.
Like, damn, it's so funny when you don't, what type of major venturing,
Mhm.
right? Like doing things all over again. And nature's always been very like astonishing to me. But it feels so that was the first time in a really long time that I have driven a long period of time by myself
Mhm.
and gotten to just explore.
Then you probably just need time to yourself.
But I get time to myself. Think of how much I'm by myself so much.
Yeah, but like you're leaving the environment
Right.
by yourself,
Right.
you know?
I'm traveling and venturing off by myself. And it's funny because I remember when um that used to be a scary concept to me, but now it's gotten to the point where it's something that I need to do more.
Yeah, for sure. I really just your body saying like, okay, like this is a safe space,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
which is good. I miss
Yeah.
that though. I'm
Adventuring.
yeah, just like leaving here.
I mean, in all reality, are you still working in the office or are you working from home most of the time?
I'm like a hybrid. I'm like
Can
here.
you like not go to work for a week and just
Well, it's still tax
switch
season.
places? Well, I mean in the future. I don't mean right this second.
Yeah. I just think the timing wasn't right
Mhm.
for these past couple of years. That was the issue. Um because like I moved, like things
Yeah,
were,
you did a lot.
I did a lot within COVID. But the Philippines is open up, so I might go back soon. Um, I might go to the plan is like to go to Disney, like around my dad and mine's birthday,
Love
like
it.
that week or whatever. So it's like I'm gonna go places. It's just like the burnout is real
Oh yeah.
when I haven't
It's
traveled for so long, and I've been so used to like going somewhere at least once a year.
and
Like,
it's so much more intense to have like of a good experience, the good things that come from it that make you feel good, but also the the way it tires you
yeah,
because there's a lot more going on, especially if it's at like a new place that you've not really gone to before.
right. And like right now, I want to stick with places that I've been to, so that doesn't happen.
Right. Yeah.
Um, it's just like, but then it's like, oh, I haven't been on a plane in like more than 2 years.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward. I'm really
I'm
not
not looking forward to that.
that. I'm super not looking forward to that. It's funny, I was talking to a close friend of mine like last weekend, and we were talking about how what's been super difficult. I we've talked about it, but not necessarily made enough. Like many things in this life, we talk about its existence, but don't make enough room for it to be a thing that we manage or deal
Mhm.
with or overcome. I feel like I've heard so many people talking about because of everything that happened with COVID and there being a new normal and the world is very different than it was 2 years ago for a lot of different reasons. We were talking about like what comes next, right? Like where we want to go in our lives and what we want to do. And she like is preparing to like potentially have children.
Mhm.
And she was saying how she doesn't want she expected to do a lot of things in the last 2 years that she wasn't able to do, and travel was a big part of the things that were on her list. And because of it, she's like, I want to have kids. I don't want to postpone having kids, but I didn't get the fulfillment that I wanted out of the last 2 years of my life.
Uh-huh.
It's so true. And I was saying to her too, the last 2 years, I mean, there's so many things you can't control what's going to happen, but like that was like a level of we no one had control over anything, and things didn't go as planned to like a totally new extreme. And I said to her, I was like, look, I really want to have children at one point, in my life by any
Mhm.
means also, but like I'm very well aware of the fact that I'm going to be selfish. I'm not going to do it yet because and that like was like the last kind of realization for me, and in not having the last 2 years, like I'm not ready to have kids, and it sounds kind of selfish, but it's like the truth. And she was like, no, it's 100% selfish, and that's why I kind of feel ashamed in saying it. And I was like, why? But I said to her, and she was kind of like hesitant to talk about it. I was like, you know, this is something we don't talk about enough, but like the last 2 years was fucking traumatic.
Mhm.
I'm still trying to adjust to being like, okay, what now? And being hesitant to take actions on things because I'm like, well, it's like that whole like barrier of like real hard YOLOing
Mhm.
versus like if I feel like if you're somebody who I don't want to make judgments, but I feel like some people took potentially two different paths. Some people were like, well, it could all go to shit tomorrow, so YOLO. And then me being the traumatized worry person that I am, I'm like, well, it could go to shit tomorrow, so like I don't want to do that. But
Mhm.
so it's like I'm
Mhm.
picking it on. But we really when were any of us, especially as adults, given time to grieve over the fact that like it's I don't know why this is what's coming to my mind, but in the Marvel stories when the blip happens, right? And then everything
Sure.
comes back, it's
Uh-huh. I
this
don't know what that
was
means.
you don't how do you not know what that means?
I don't watch Marvel movies.
Dude, okay, so long story short, like there's a blip and
Uh-huh.
half the people on the earth like vanish and disappear.
Okay.
5 years until they're brought back.
Okay.
I'm not even gonna go into any more like
That's
then
fine.
go right
I
over
got
that,
it.
but that's what happens.
Yeah.
Half of the population of the world disappears and vanishes for 5 years, and then they come back.
Okay.
And
End
if
of story.
you're curious to know why, watch the movies. But that, I mean, the potential of that actually being the reality of what happens, right? Where like people lose 5 years of their lives, like what just happened to us was potentially the most possible plausible blip, right? That we literally all had to halt our lives and major adjust our lives, and it's you don't come out of that like the same way that you were. There has to be a grieving period parts of you change, parts of your existence and your being changes from going through that. And that's, I think that what I learned about myself from leaving the home, like my home this weekend and doing something different, one of the things that changed for me is that because that sense of being able to adventure was really like taken away for such a long time, and there was so much fear around what consequence would happen if you did adventure, that now myself is like, you need to do this more, because like I think there's a little bit of fear around the fact of like, what if you can't do it again?
Yeah, and I think that's pretty normal. I don't think it's selfish.
No,
Well,
I don't
no,
think
it
it
is.
is.
It's
Like
you're just putting yourself first.
it's the good, it's the kind of selfish that we need to allow us to do. It's the kind of selfish that leads to the bullshit of like what self-care is.
Yeah.
Like no, it and
Because if you know, and also like especially with kids, because that's just a variable that I mean, if you try, sometimes it doesn't work out till years later anyway. So it's like,
right, you have no control over that.
right, you have no control over that. But even so, like, even if you do, because like I don't believe in like timelines for life. Like you go at your own pace, right?
Mhm.
And because of COVID, like I mean that's altered everyone's pace,
Right,
whatever
and
pace that
if
you have.
anything that if there's anything that could possibly happen that made it what you said about not there not being a one true timeline, it made it a reality. Like it
Yeah,
did.
and like we're all still so young, like you know.
It's funny. I I super enjoy. I'm reading. Right now, I'm reading a book that was, I don't remember, something with courage, but it was written by. I also don't remember his name. Sorry, I stink. But he at one point worked for Disney in some like really high marketing. Like he helped. He was a CEO of something around something with marketing the movies that Disney made. Like he was
Okay, sure,
up there. Um,
sure.
and I'm reading his story right now, and his whole like personal life went to shit, and then his whole life went to shit. Like obviously he's not working for Disney anymore, but and his whole life pivoted well into his 40s in a way that he never saw coming. And then
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, I'm also reading Untamed by Glennon Doyle right now, which
Mm-hmm.
you would probably actually really really like, because she untangles so many stereotypes about like being programmed into like different ways, whether you're like female and what your occupation should be, and what your
Mm-hmm.
like she talks a lot about like gender identity and sexual orientation and all of these awesome things, but
Mm-hmm.
she didn't have this major change in her life until well into her 40s, like so. And I always think of do you know how old the guy was who started KFC when he started KFC when it became a thing?
No idea.
He was well into his 60s.
Yeah, I can believe
KFC
that.
became a thing.
Obviously. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Like that's why he's current. That's why everybody was always like, "Why is he this old guy?" Like, no, the guy who started KFC was literally a friggin' old.
Literally just old.
So, and it's funny because that brings me so much peace, because I was always, you know how I am, like an overachiever and having expectations and all of these things. So we have so much time and so little. It's this weird, life is such a weird paradox.
Mm-hmm.
But even if you feel like you don't have time, right? Or if you're so worried about chasing after something, there's no guarantee. There's no in a good way, not in a scary way. Like there's no guarantee, and maybe you'll get there and you'll pivot, and it's just
Maybe you'll get there and you don't even want it. Like, like,
Right. And how many friggin' people get there, right? Whatever their there is, and they're
yeah.
fucking miserable, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's so difficult when our world, I don't want to say the world, because there are parts of the world that then that's why they despise America because we kind of make this super capitalist agenda just like the outright front of the way that we live our lives. But the world, there's not a single thing in our world, in the natural world and the science world, that functions and flourishes under instant gratification.
Well, yeah.
And the capitalist world, the world that we live in America too, pushes for an instant, like literally. I don't know if there's there any other like definition or words that you can. It's an instant gratification, everything.
Yeah, I think it's more like a peak. Like you hit a peak and then what else? You hit another peak and you hit another peak and it's
Right.
just like and it's always like the journey and not the destination like
It's
thing. But
so
like also
funny.
like the journey sometimes sucks too. Like
Dude, the journey does suck. Life
yeah.
is,
And the destination sometimes sucks too. Like,
it is so funny. I had, I mean, I would add more to what he said, but I had a professor in college who literally would say to us all the time, life sucks and then you die. And,
yeah, it's a common phrase now.
and it really does, like, it really does suck, but it's grotesquely beautiful because of how much it sucks and how much we get to experience all the suck and how much we get to feel, like we get to feel everything that happens and everything that happens to us and everything that happens around us, and like that's hard shit to do. But
Hmm.
I would rather, I say this on a good day, but I would rather feel that than not feel it at all, right? It's better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all, right? All those great, amazing sayings and poems and songs and all that shit. Like, there have been people that have been on this earth for thousands of years before us, and they have some type of artifact or something that they've created, some type of reference to that concept of the fact that it sucks,
Hmm.
but you get it. Like, you get to enjoy it, you get to experience it at all.
Yeah, like you really just take it day by day. Like
Yeah.
whatever plan that you may have will always shift.
Yeah, and that's okay. I'm honestly just now settling into the season of my life where I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen next. Like, I have things that I want, right? And things that I'm working towards, and I have passions, but I've hit a couple of like milestones that I was working towards, and now I'm in like the I'm deeming it the I have to find a better way to do it because I'm, like I said, I was doing it in a not good way and it made me very unhappy, but I'm deeming it my like be still, like a moment of still where I need to
Yeah.
stop, like you, and you know this about me, like, and you call me out on it for the podcast all the time, right? Like, I'm always chasing something, I'm always running after something, I'm always doing something. And I think that
Hmm.
like this next mini phase of my life, I need to just be still and see where I come to within myself. But then that's also the moments where really crazy things find me when I stop chasing after something.
Yeah, because you're more like aware.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the thing. Like even for me, like I don't want to like I've done so much the past like couple years, and I'm like, let me just like stay here, like in whatever space that I
Yeah.
am, because like it
Yeah.
gets tiring
And
chasing after something.
it's a different, right? Like, my first thought in us talking about this is like, oh, well, we were told to be still in, the last 2 years with COVID, but that was a different, it's one thing to be forced to be still. It's another thing to choose stillness
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and like
and physical and mental capacities.
right, and I think we have the option to be still is what
Hmm.
is what is different.
Yeah, but it's hard. I think it, I definitely see myself being somebody who, as I'm getting older and as I'm struggling with this whole dichotomy of society versus nature, I guess, or that instant gratification versus like living your freaking life. Um, I see myself how easy it could be to slip into being somebody who has an addiction
Mm-hmm.
and how thin that thread could be in being pulled where like everything unwinds and just falls to shit. And I wonder with the raised level of concerns about like mental states and mental illness and the distress of the mind and the like astronomical levels of addiction.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder where the breaking point is. And what's so frustrating is that so much of the influence on where that breaking point lies is going to fall within the means of a system in our country that functions on oppression and unequal support and opportunity for people. Meaning,
Yeah, I lost you at some point.
so like you are more likely to see recurring issues of addiction or not being able to seek or get help with addiction in people of color, right? Or in people in lower socioeconomic standing, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And not even like having access to resources, but just having like society having tolerance for it even being an issue in the first place that someone is dealing with, right? So what is a concern for me, right? If I mean I hope that there's a better world around the corner, but I mean when you look at the track record of where we've been the last decade and how things are not getting better, I also see there a potential for us to be facing a really scary reality with especially with the upcoming generations now that just went like that were young and dealing with COVID, like what happened with COVID. Um, I mean, in all reality, I know a lot of students who are coming out of high school like after COVID and already have dealt with like rehab level addictions,
Mm-hmm.
a handful. Um, so what I worry about is if it gets to the point where things ultimately have to get worse before they get better, does it, what happens to anybody who's not going to be supported through the broken systems? Like, does it just create a wider gap? Is the fall away of the middle class going to be due to the onset of like mental health? You know what I mean? Like this, like these are like the
Yeah, I mean there's so many variables. It's
I'm like so curious.
I mean capitalism isn't helping. The ever splitting of the two-party system doesn't help. Uh, racism is still a thing, discrimination is still a thing.
Yeah.
Um, I mean the middle class. I mean the falling of the middle class has always been slowly but surely, but there is still a middle class, thankfully here. If
Mm.
that does end up being, if there is a fall of the middle class and it's just upper and lower, like, I mean, that's a whole different,
I
that's a whole
definitely feel
different
like
world
what's
outlook.
going to be able to make a really big distinction on that in the future and another potential breaking point is the aftermath influence of what will happen to future generations if nothing changes with the way that college tuition is.
College tuition is such a scam.
Yep.
Like, I don't like. Again, I'm very thankful that my parents have paid for my college tuition when I went to
Mm.
undergrad. So I came out with no loans. Um, but even seeing that deteriorated us, you know? Like in either way, if you can pay it off or if you can't pay it off and you're at loans, you're still at a loss.
Correct.
And like when you come out of that education, like for college, and we went to a great university, I can't, it's not like we went to, and I'm not knocking down anything, but like, you know, it'd be different. We went to community college and then went to our university, like Rutgers, after 2 years.
Yeah.
That's still, a help. But even so, like the level of education that we all got, pretty much the same. No one at the workplace and anyone that has gotten
Don't care.
employed
No one
doesn't
cares.
matter. Like,
No one
thanks for
cares.
like, yeah, no one
And
cares.
it's so funny, especially for me now.
No
Most
one, no
of
one cares.
most of the it's just not relevant. Like
Yeah, literally.
the certifications and the further education and like all the credits that I have and the CEUs and all of those things that I've built up that had nothing to do with what my majors were are what I use now more than that. So it's like it what
Which
I would not be the person that I am now or gotten on the path that I got to if it wasn't for all of that. So I don't want to say it was wasted,
right.
right? It wasn't worth
It
it.
wasn't wasted. Like especially
It
for me, like
it
obviously needed that.
cost too much. It cost more than it should have or more
Correct.
it was worth potentially. So it's a weird and it's funny because I'm watching two of the funny things that haven't changed that have just become more annoyingly expensive in that whole American dream concept was like to get a college degree, right? That was a huge American, and it's for a lot of people. Like I know so many people that have come to America from other countries, especially uh African countries and like India, and some people that have come from like the Middle East. I don't know why that left my brain.
Yeah.
They come here purposely for access to the higher education at the price and at the level of
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah.
So like that's still very true for the American dream, but it's funny how another one of the I mean anybody else who's from Jersey sees this. I always get a flashback and remember like those funny commercials from the 1950s that I've seen about like the home communities. Like, I mean, it's funny, Marie and I only know each other because one of those complexes was built in a really small old ass town that didn't have any other complexes like that. It was one of the first ones.
Yeah.
But those complex communities, like back in the 1950s, and wanting to push people to get mortgages and being a part of the community and all of that stuff. And it's so funny to see how, especially, and I saw so much of it driving from central Jersey through South Jersey through Delaware. And my brother's about an hour and a half into Maryland. And you look from side to side on highways that were barren, and there's just complex over there and complex over here and complex over here. And like it's crazy how those two things, 50, 60, 70 years later are still such an ideal.
Yeah, like higher education and owning your own house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that sense, it's not even the owning your own house. And I think a lot of it was the it's the generations that were born in the 50s, the six and that time, right? Because for their families that was the dream, right? So they were still influenced by that being the dream. It really honestly it's the complexes that get me, because it's like that house looks the same, and we lived in one of them. I remember driving around being like that house looks the same and that house looks the same and that house looks the same and that
Yeah, there was literally like five sample
you got options, yeah, 5
options. And they're like, all
designs,
right,
layouts,
here's the 5 designs and layouts, pick one.
and
And
it's
then they
just
just
so
built.
funny to drive other states and see that still happening, right? We moved into our complex over 20 years ago now.
Yeah, I mean, we were in like fourth grade or something.
Literally, honestly, I think 20 years ago now, because I was 9 when we moved there.
Then yeah, 20 years ago.
So
You guys are still there.
yeah, my parents are still there. So it's so weird to see that still be an ideal, like that cookie cutter.
It is it's still the American dream for many people. I don't know if it's like,
But why do they have to? Why is that part? Why does it have to be? And right, that's another thing that like owns real estate, and why real estate sucks the way it sucks right now is because all of these like major real estate like I can't think of what they're
realtors.
the like the Toll Brothers and like all of those
Oh yeah, yeah. Like the
those
contractors and stuff.
yeah, like the contracting companies, like they just everything. It's like it's like a really bad like landscaping virtual game. It's like copy and paste. Let's put it over here and let's pop it over there and let's put it over there.
Yeah, I mean, you see a ton of not even just like housing, like I don't know, streets, but like condos and apartment buildings, and you know, there's one around here that's being built, and I feel like it started when I like moved here, like in September, and it's like almost up to like almost like built, and that was only a few months
I
ago.
just, and it's so funny to think
And
about that
so,
by you because you're in such an overpopulated area already. Like, where are those people going?
mhm.
Like, what's happening? It's just, it's,
And not even that, it's so convenient too. Like that's why, like it's very overpopulated for a reason
but
because it's
that's
so
why, and
convenient.
that's why
Yeah,
Jersey is able to do what Jersey's able to do with that because
we build up. Like it's just apartments and condos that are like
we were. It's one of the funny things that my I was having a conversation with my sister-in-law about is like we're we're taking up so much space, but at the same time, like everything's starting to go up, right? Like they're doing these little communities now where like you have
like
um
four floor buildings, and it's like 5 units per floor, so it's like all right,
yeah, and
x
it's
amount of.
like there's stores on the bait like you've seen like every
Yeah, of course.
you've seen these communities like there's stores on the bottom and then somewhere in the and it's funny one of the leading places in doing this is actually you know Lifetime, right? The Lifetime Fitness.
I think so, yeah.
So this was 2 years ago that this came across like my awareness. They started creating these communities where it's like this huge massive like the building, multiple buildings all attached, where everything you could possibly want is inside of it. Like your housing's inside of it, fitness center, like the whole Lifetime Fitness center
Like
is
you don't have to leave.
attached. You never have, there's movie theaters, there's like everything. And it's funny because I like when I first saw like the layouts for them, I was like, this thing could blast off into space. Like
Right.
it would be,
Its
it would be
own
really fine.
sustainable thing.
Right. But it's everything starting to build up. And it's funny because as we were talking about this, do you remember the movie The Fifth Element with Bruce Willis?
I've never watched it.
So they live in, it's like the Jetsons. You know the Jetsons, right? Like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
never see the ground, right? You just see
Right.
these really tall buildings and they fly between, like that's what it's like in The Fifth Element too. Um, like is that I don't is that what the future like really looks like? Because I can't do cities anymore. I like already cannot do like building on building on building on. Like where I live now makes me crazy, and it's like there's grass everywhere and trees that I can still like. So it's super interesting, and I what's crazy is that there are people who are total or would prefer that, right? Who are totally okay with that, but it definitely has made me realize that I'm not okay with that.
Well, it's because we're just overpopulated as a world, not
Yeah.
even as a nation. It's just like overpopulation. So like to house people that aren't buying, it also is like the millennials buying, like the market now. Like some of us don't want full on houses. I didn't want a house.
Yeah.
I just wanted
Yeah.
like a
Like
condo
a space that's
apartment.
actually yours. Yeah.
Yeah, that like that I didn't have a landlord but was mine. So it was like, all right, like mortgage out a condo. And then there are other millennials that like just want townhomes where it's like, yes, there is a yard, yes, whatever, but all that outside stuff is for the association. So it's
Right.
like it's the market too. Or like,
No, it definitely has a benefit. And there are some places where it's more available than other places.
right.
Like,
And
I definitely am seeing in places that it like was straight up farmland. Like now there's like this random like condo complex there that wasn't there before, or like a
and
town.
like climate change isn't real apparently with all this shit. Like, come on now.
It's just it's super interesting. I just it makes when you start to have awareness of the way that things are changing, and it's changing at such a quick rate, right? Like I was telling my
Yeah.
when I was driving down, I mean, 2 years is not a lot of time, and the level of like overdevelopment that I'm starting to see in like areas that used to be bare, like when I would drive through Maryland, is just like, what the hell? Like,
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
going on? And it's just like how do you do, what do you do with that? It's crazy. It's like I said, it's definitely made me very, I have now become super sensitive to the physical spaces that I'm in, and how close I am to natural things has a huge impact on me.
And there's not enough natural things around us, so
No, it's
so
rough.
so I get uh the need to like
Chilling.
go away.
Yeah.
It
So
makes sense.
we shall see what happens. It'll be real interesting when Dan and I like actually do move again, because
Mm-hmm.
it's like what we want and what's available, and right, like what it's just, oh, it's so much, it really is so much. But I think that the nice thing is that even when you have a home and you have a space, there's always opportunity to adventure. And today I was thinking about, remember how when we talked about, like when we watched Don't Look Up, we were talking about like if the end of the world were to happen and you knew about it, what would you do?
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily want to go on any extravagant traveling, but I 100% would do a whole shit ton of just like random adventuring
That makes sense.
and traveling and backpacking and like just experiencing and seeing as much of, like, having a new as much new experiences as I could.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes
Thinking
sense.
about that today.
Yeah. Yeah, after you going off and driving for 3 hours, yeah, that makes sense.
It's fun to find yourself. It's kind of
Yeah.
scary to find yourself. It's scary to have the realization of the fact that you've lost yourself. If that makes sense. I mean, sometimes it's but ignorance is bliss, guys. But if you do come in tune to the fact that something doesn't feel right, it's terrifying, but it's beautiful to be able to have something make you realize like how you find yourself again, and like have a new depth and level of understanding yourself because of that experience. So go find some place to adventure.
Yeah, agreed. It's really just the re-finding yourself aspect that most of us have to do, especially during our 20s.
Yeah. And you're gonna have to do for the rest of your life, because the world that we live in constantly wants to tell you who you are.
Right. Exactly.
So, ooh, I'm getting hiccups from my vegan mac and cheese. Well, thank you guys for joining us. I hope that you've had a nice, calming, relaxing weekend. Well, we'll be checking in with you. We're listening to us on a Tuesday, so hopefully you're having a good week, but or Tuesday or Wednesday. But thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Don't be afraid to take an adventure, because you deserve to reconnect with yourself, and that's a huge part of living your best life.
Okay, bye.